Welcome to Shop Talk Live, Fine Woodworking Magazine's bi-weekly podcast. I'm your host and Fine Woodworking editor, Tom McKenna. And with me this episode are Executive Art Director Mike Pekovich.
Hey, guys.
Special Projects Editor Matt Kenny.
Hello.
And our web producer, Ben Strano.
Hi, everybody.
And as always, helping behind the scenes is Jeff Rose. Before we get started with the questions, I have to take care of some business. This podcast is sponsored by Titebond's new Quick and Thick Multi-Surface Glue, the thickest, fastest drying water-based wood glue available. In fact, it's 2 times faster and 3 times thicker than traditional PVA wood glues. Titebond Quick and Thick is ideal for interior woodworking as it provides a strong initial tack, allows for realignment of working pieces, and dries clear. Visit titebond.com/quickandthick to learn more. Let's get to the heart of the matter.
I know.
You got some good questions this week?
Actually, let's let's start with some questions. Ben had this ingenious idea of hiding the questions from us.
He had an idea.
So we're going to roll this bad boy out. Comments welcome at the end. So we have an assortment of Matt's 52 boxes sitting in front of us, and each one has some sort of question, woodworking related, hopefully,
In it.
So I'll have Matt, since they're his boxes, I'll let him grab one and I'll let him read it too.
We'll just start with Bubbles over here.
Be gentle.
All right. This is a question. This is taking too long.
It is.
All right. Julian.
Oh my gosh. It's not. It's like 4 pages long.
It says, "Dear most esteemed experts." This is a really long question. Did you not edit this down at all?
I tried to edit it.
Oh my gosh.
It didn't that long.
Jeez. All right.
Hope you have a good background song for this one.
All right, so here goes, everybody. I've been challenged flattening small cross-section pieces on my joiner. I don't know what that means. I spent the greater part of a day fine-tuning my joiner to no avail. I purchased a brand 8-inch joiner because of it. It has the longest beds available and a parallelogram lift linkage with individual offset bushings for adjustment, parallelogram beds. I outfitted the new machine with a bird segmented gutter head.
Nice.
I have the tools and machinist experience to align machinery. It appears everything I've tried leaves me with less than my desired straight wood. The beds are coplanar within 1/1000th of an inch in a slight 5. I don't even know what goes smaller than thousandths. What's the next thing after 1/1000th?
10,000.
5/10,000ths of an inch in each midsection at a flat. I adjusted the outfeed table tangent to the cutter circle, but found a tall, thick test piece failed to clean up at the tailing edge.
Yep. Easy.
Yeah,
Done.
we already know the answer, don't we?
Yeah.
Do you want me to keep reading?
No, outfeed table's
stop.
too high. Go ahead, man. Finish the question.
Well, oddly,
Sorry, Ben.
I'm reading this whole question, and it's from our old friend, Faithful Listener, who thinks I talk too much. So he adjusted the outfeed table tangent to the cutter circle, but found a tall, thick test piece failed to. Okay, when I adjusted the outfeed table.
I got a better answer. Okay, keep going.
When I adjusted the outfeed bed 1/1000ths to 2/1000ths below the cutter circle, as suggested by Mike.
Yes.
Boom. See, he already knew what you were going to say. I get a slight concave edge as observed by placing 2 jointed edges of wide, stiff boards together. Think panel glue up. In the case of panels, this would not be a problem. However, my problem is with small cross sections.
I don't know what that means. Short pieces.
Yeah, I guess so. Lately are something that's not very wide, like an inch wide, so maybe edge joints it, and it could just be wood movement taking it out.
All right.
Lately, my fine woodworking projects have been hijacked by picture framing, which exacerbates this dilemma, exactly
There
what
it
I was
is.
talking about. So, all right, Chapter 4. No matter what I try, I am unable to successfully flatten nominal 1 1/4 by 3/4 inch in smaller pieces. Well, yeah, there you go. I mean, the pieces are shorter than the infeed and outfeed tables. I am using push pads to immediately apply pressure.
Ooh, there you go.
And pieces
Wrong.
as it reaches the outfeed table.
Yeah.
Pushing forward at the tail end until I can maneuver both push pads to the outfeed side. I tried applying all the pressure on the infeed table with predictable tapered results.
Yeah, not good.
I've tried light, 15 thousandths and thick cuts and all have the same results, a concave surface. Please offer some guidance and suggestions so I can finish this framing project and get on with some real work. Wait a minute. And it goes on. No, I'm just kidding.
You lost me. You lost me at esteemed.
That's where it is. And the person is Dean.
Dean. I wonder if it's our buddy Dean. Dean, a lot of things going on here. Let's start with the last first. If you have relatively thin stock with a bow and it's relatively long, and you're using a push pad to push down on the stock as you're pushing it forward, you're sort of flattening things out. So the minute it gets past, onto the outfeed table, and you lift up that push stick, it's just going to go back to its shape. So that's kind of easy.
Yeah, because he's pushing it flat, and he's taking the bow out of it as it goes across. But as soon as he releases the pressure off, it goes back to bowed.
Yeah. So I like some sort of like a hooky type stick pushing it forward, like a table saw push stick, as opposed to a pad. The push stick, hooks on the end, and you're pushing it forward with really light downward pressure. And if it's really thin and long, it's like, sometimes you just have to deal with just a little bit of bow.
So here's something I do in a case like this, where you have something that is got a bow in it, and it's either hard to not put downward pressure on it and take the bow out, or it's too long. Yeah, it is recommended practice to always have 2 points of contact down, but in a case like this, I will turn it over and go with the center of it, and
that's really smart.
Start to joint that flat.
So you can put your push pad right in the center. So hopefully you're not obviously taking off one end and leaving the other one high. That's really good advice.
And then when you get a reasonable amount of it straight, it's just like it's really super easy.
Yeah. Here's another thing, sort of with the bow side down. It's like if you're resawing stock, say you take an 8/4 piece and you rip it or resaw it in half, you typically, the pieces bow towards each other, but you have a lot of sort of case hardened wood to the outside of the stock. So if you keep removing the bow on the inside, it keeps wanting to bow more.
Yes.
Where if you remove the outside or the convex surface first, sometimes you're actually straightening out the stock on the opposite side as you're sort of getting it flat on that side.
Right. So it's equalizing the tension.
But here's the thing with segmented cutter head, in a helical fashion, those little teethy guys, they're not flat. They're sort of curvy shaped. They're arced on top.
Yeah.
So if you're setting your outfeed table to the top of the arc, well, on the sides of the arc where it's lower, they're actually sitting. How's that going to work? I wonder if that works. I wonder if it's because of segmented cutter head, you have to lower it. My math may be wrong, but anyway, if it doesn't cut on the back end, lower it, which he did, and it sounded like, I couldn't tell if he got some snipe on the back end.
That's because it was too low.
No, it sounded like he was getting the effect of having the outfeed table too high, and it wasn't. Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, I ran out of gas here.
Yeah, I said, he lost me at esteemed.
Ben, we'll have to talk about the notion of editing after the podcast. Because holy cow, that was a long question.
No, that's right. Okay, so it won't cut if your outfeed table is higher than your knives, right?
Right.
So if you set it to the highest point, a little curvy tooth, it's actually higher than the ends. So it could be technically this flush, but it's actually high. And there you go. I'm glad that worked out well. That would have been my smooth move if I was wrong on that one.
I'm kind of hesitant to move on to this next new idea because so far the previous one has been not so smashing.
Yeah.
But what's the next new idea? Is there
well, it's yours, man.
Oh, we're gonna do that now.
Yeah.
All right. So
hang on to your hats.
Yeah, I just wanted to share with everybody a statistic. I'm going to start sharing statistics with everybody because we know how exciting they are. So this is my stat of the podcast. And did you guys know that 87% of all woodworkers have at least 3 tape measures that no longer work correctly?
I can't dispute that, but I have no idea how you would have even figured that out.
I'm just saying.
Now, does this mean that there's going to be more of these to come in the future?
I have an entire notebook of these.
Well, then I look forward to
All of them thoroughly researched.
We'll have to have Ben rip them out and put them in your boxes.
Yeah, they're all. I have a research assistant named Captain Morgan who does all this for me. All right.
Wow, this is a slow start.
What do we say
This is
about
brutal.
afternoon podcasts?
Yeah,
We
not a
keep
good
doing
idea.
this to ourselves and poor listeners. So let's move to the next question. Hopefully, it'll be less than 4 chapters like the previous one.
Oh, let me open a box.
Yeah, I'll let
All
Mike run with this one.
Don't touch my boxes.
This is a little ebony box with green trim. It's very nice, and it's got some nice fabric liner in the bottom.
Oof.
Ah, jeez.
Not at the bottom.
Okay, this is from Cameron. This question is from Matt. I should let you read this. I watched your segment on Highland Woodworking about your mitering jig for small boxes. I recently tried to make a similar jig, but it was for a piece that was 6 inches wide because the results I was getting on the table saw weren't good. Sure, I was using a Stanley 9.5 block plane, having a really hard time, blah, blah, blah. Admittedly, I'm new to blade was sharpened.
Read the question.
Okay,
Mike.
basically, he wasn't getting good results with his block plane. Was my blade not sharp enough, or is there something else I need to know? Thanks.
Well, I think the problem is that if you made the jig exactly the way that I made it, as shown on the Highland Hardware, Highland Woodworker TV web show, which has a base and then just has 2 rails, but there's nothing connecting the top, you know?
Right.
So you have this you have a hand plane, a block plane that's shorter than your workpiece is wide.
Okay.
And it only is really going to be supported by the base while you're trying to
Go all the way across.
across. And I suspect that what you ended up doing was not keeping it tight down onto the 45-degree angle that's cut into the base piece, and so it didn't cut accurately.
Okay.
If I needed to do a really wide piece like that, you would want to move to a longer plane. That's one option. So like a 4 or a 5, or something something like an iron miter plane, something like that, which would work, because then you'd have more of the plane would be in contact, and it'd be easier to keep it at the right angle.
Okay.
Because with a block plane, there's going to be at some point while he's planing that miter where the block plane's not touching either rail.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be easy to take that thing out of 45 degree. So that, or what I would do is make a jig that the same way, but also has a rail across the width of it at the top.
Okay. Right.
And it's also at 45. And then you could skew the block plane so that the tail of the block plane, that's not what you call it. No, I can't. The word's
heel.
No, you have the toe and the whatever, the back of it, the heel, sounds right to me, is on the top rail, and the toe is on the bottom rail.
So you're skewing it down a little bit.
You're skewing it down, and
Nice.
the blade is on the workpiece, and that would keep the block plane at 45 degrees.
Yeah, and the workpiece down against the bed of the jig.
And the workpiece down against the
Cool.
bed of the jig. So that's if you have something wider than your blade is long.
Or you
your
could have
plane
just
is long.
said, no, you're not sharp enough.
Yeah.
I feel the need to interject because what Mike glossed over was that that was on the paper was that he was sharpened to 1200 grit, and he was having a hard time with the end grain.
Oh, geez, Mike. Well, so
I said all of that.
No, he has the problem that I just described, which I think is likely, but also, yes, 1200 grit is not sharp enough for end grain.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not high enough. It's really not high enough for anything, but you need to get like a polishing stone. Because really, I mean, I sharpen. 1200 is my lowest stone. Then I go to 600 and then 13,000.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, there you go.
All right.
This is working out really well.
It's like a bulldozer on the highway. Let's see if we can ramp up the energy a bit with our all-time favorite technique of all time for this week. And let's start off with Mike.
All right. Favorite technique of all time of this week is spacer block. which I probably mentioned in the past. These are wonderful things, capable of doing many operations with great accuracy. In this instance, I'm actually combining two spacer blocks of different widths to tackle a really tough problem, which is cutting a double mortise and tenon joint, where you have two mortises, you got to cut two tenons exactly the same thickness as the width of the mortise with the exact same spacing. Really, really hard to do. I normally break this up into like a billion steps and combine a dado blade and a bandsaw and test pieces and this and that. I went a little bit different route. I pulled out my my tenoning jig for my table saw, and I wanted to cut a 5/16 wide tenon. So instead of making a cut, flipping it, making another cut, which wasn't going to work because I need two tenons, I whipped up a spacer block that I could make one cut, put the spacer block between the jig and the workpiece to make another cut, and it gives me the tenon exactly the right thickness that I want. Took one or two tries to dial that in, but once I had that, now I'm cutting my tenons exactly where I want to cut them. So then I got a second spacer block, which was basically the desired width between the tenons plus the thickness of the tenon or width of the mortise, which in this case was 5/16. So I went to my mortiser. I did one row of mortises. I put the spacer block in to space my mortises. So then I went back to the table saw. I used my tenon spacer to cut one tenon. Then I added the gap spacer to cut the first cheek of the second tenon, and then the gap spacer plus my tenon spacer to cut the final cheek. Mm-hmm. Boom, done, perfect.
Cheeky.
It amazes me how many uses you can find for blue tape.
I didn't use any tape this time.
Oh. Just kidding. Anyways, no, that's cool. That's a cool technique. I've seen that before. Is it okay if I say that? I've seen that technique before.
Yeah, I mean, it shows up in variations. Tim Russo did it in conjunction with a router.
A router?
And a bandsaw.
And a bandsaw.
This is much, much different. This is in conjunction with a mortiser and a tenoning jig on a table saw.
Oh, yeah, now I see. Yeah.
Very different.
Very different.
Yes.
It's very smart, though.
So it worked really, really well. I was very proud of myself.
Yeah.
For a while, but then I will continue the story later on.
And there's no fitting of the tenon at all. It just pops right in there.
Yeah.
Will that be part of an article?
Yeah, it was. Tim Rousseau wrote it about 4 years ago.
Yeah. It will show up again in this new form, slightly modified form.
Modified original.
Yes.
Well, since we're still rolling really well, I'll throw this toward Matt.
Okay. All right. So my favorite technique of all time this week, I believe I've probably mentioned it before, but I just have reused it this week or in this past week, and it's something I really like. So my favorite wood is cherry, and my favorite cut of cherry is rift sawn. So it's very hard to find rift sawn cherry much wider than say 4 or 5 inches, because they just don't make rift sawn cherry boards. Right. You gotta, there's no stack of that at the lumber yard. Or
you find some, you pay through the nose for a 13-inch wide cherry board and rip the rift sawn edges off and throw the center away.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So it's no good. So many years ago, I started when I was making boxes like this little guy here, which you can see the side is only about 1.25 inches. Well, anything up to about 2 inches, I realized that I could get rift sawn stock by ripping off the edge. And the edge of the board, like of an 8/4 board, becomes the face of the side. So that's how I could get rift sawn stock. And then when I was making my 52 boxes, there was one where it was like 9 inches wide or deep, and I wanted all that to be rift sawn, and it struck me that, okay, I can rip slices off the edge of, I had some 12/4 cherry, and then lay those down and glue them up, and I'd get a 9-inch wide rift sawn board. And because the grain is tight and straight, you don't really see the glue lines. So that's my technique, is to, if you want rift sawn stock or quarter sawn stock, find a board, a thick board, 8/4, 12/4, and rip boards off the edge and work your way across the width of it. and you end up with and reglue them in the panels, and you end up with nice wide rift sawn stock.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And this works because you just bought a plain sawn 8/4 cherry board.
Plain sawn, yeah. Sorry, I didn't
which
say
means
that.
the rings are sort of diving at 45 degrees at the edges of the board. So as you cut into the center, you're probably getting more quarter sawn, but that's probably not necessarily a bad thing.
It does transition to quarter sawn. I personally do not like quarter sawn cherry, but I deal with it here. Quarter sawn cherry, just like anything. Well, I don't think anything quarter sawn, but when you quarter sawn white oak, you have that really long ray fleck, right? When you quarter saw maple or cherry, the ray fleck is more. It's not like that. It's like a different. It's kind of almost like a shimmery,
almost like metallic or something. Yeah.
And it's also kind of a pain in the butt, and I don't really like that. I like rift sawn, because you don't get that ray fleck.
Right.
And also then the edge of the board will also be rift sawn. But if it's quarter sawn, then the edge of the board is flat sawn. Mm-hmm. So I don't like that look. Yeah. I want it all straight grain. So rift sawn is what I prefer. But you're right. You have to be careful, because the further you can go into the board as you're doing this, the closer it gets to being quarter sawn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, it's my turn. Well, my favorite, all-time favorite technique of all time is related to sharpening. I did a kind of a smooth move. I dropped a plane blade when I was getting ready to hone it, and I chipped a little bit, and so it was time to go back to the grinder. And I had been wanting to ditch the grinder and start using this granite plate that I had bought many years ago, but buried in my shop. And when I recently cleaned out, I found it, and I thought, wow, I want to start using this. So instead of going back to the grinder, I just did the primary bevel using sandpaper on the granite.
How coarse did you go?
I started with 120.
Okay.
It was pretty coarse,
yep.
But I figured I wanted to get it done fast, so I went from 120 to 150, and I did one more 220 coat on the granite. I probably didn't need to go that far.
Okay.
But so I went and did it, and it was really cool, because what it helped me. I always struggle with grinding because I don't do it very often. It's hard for me to keep that square edge and to avoid burning. It's just, even with a replacement softer wheel, I was still having trouble. So with the granite the sandpaper on granite, it allows me to put it into my into my honing jig. I have a Lee Valley, a Veritas honing guide, and I can get that primary bevel done pretty quickly and squarely, and then just readjust for the secondary bevel and go right to my stones. So it was fast and precise, a lot faster than I thought it would be.
I use that method too quite a bit, and I use I think I have a 150, 220, and 400 are the grits that I use, and I found that the 400 is fine enough that when I transition to the 1200 grit Waterstone, you're not at the 1200 grit forever trying to get rid of those.
You mean for your secondary bevel? You don't continue polishing the primary bevel with your Waterstones, do you?
Sometimes, well, I've done it both ways in the past. In the past, I would continue on with the 1200 at least to do the primary bevel, because I found if you start with the 1200 on your secondary bevel, your secondary bevel gets big fast, and then you're regrinding. So, but now I do just knock it up and just suck it up and do the secondary bevel.
Yeah, I may go up to that 400 grit, because it did, the secondary bevel on the stones did take a little bit of a while to get a polish started for me. So I don't know.
Don't be led astray, Tom. Don't be led astray. Don't be no 400 grit on a primary bevel.
But this is the technique that Denham Pachowski from Lee Nielsen wrote about in the magazine, 5 years ago now or something?
Yeah. I think they either go 80, 100, or 100, 120. And I asked him why he did two.
They use 3 grits.
I thought
in
he
that
used
article,
just 2.
there's 3 grits.
Okay.
I remember.
I don't know.
And also another thing that they recommend, and I think works pretty well, is to be consistently switching back and forth between the grits. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the reasoning behind that is that if you do that, then you're not going to get as deep as scratches. and so you don't have to. It won't take you if you just do it on the 150 and then move up. You're gonna have really deep scratches. They're gonna take a long time to remove.
Yes, that's kind of what I was
Getting-
about to say.
Yeah.
But I was going to get it wrong, so I'm glad you interrupted me because now I can just say that's what I was going to say, but it was not as good. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's really cool is those granite plates are relatively inexpensive. I think I bought mine at Woodcraft for like $27 or something.
Yeah, they're like 9 by 18,
Yep.
2 inches thick, and that's
Yep.
all you really need.
Just don't have it airmailed.
No, you have to go to Woodcraft and because you can actually, like you can buy a bigger one, like 3 inches thick, and I was going to get one, and but you mail order it, and the shipping is more than the cost of the thing itself.
Yeah.
So,
Anyway, it's fast and easy, and
thanks, Obama.
I enjoyed it.
Oh God, I hope we don't have to open another box.
Yeah, I think we do.
Oh, God.
It's back to questions.
Try the really small box because a big question can't fit in that
into
thing.
a small box. All right, so this is a little. This is a sugar box.
Okay.
It has paint on the
It's kind of a
inside.
sweet question.
It is.
I think this is the first time any item has ever been inside any of these boxes.
That's not true. All right, this is upside down.
It's like fortune cookies we're reading.
Yeah. This says, "Hi guys, I'm making some blocks for my toddler out of red oak from a big box store. I had to glue up boards to get the thickness I want. With my number 5 bench plane, I'm getting glass smooth surfaces on the faces, but tear out on some parts of the edges due to some grain direction mismatch. I guess I can either use a card scraper, which I don't have, to eliminate tear out, or sand the problem areas down. So the questions here, 2 questions. Should I sand the plane surfaces before applying a shellac finish? Will I notice any difference in applying the shellac between the plane surfaces versus areas that I've sanded to fix tear out? And the question is from Woody and HG, which is that Mercury? HG
Mercury.
is Mercury,
Mercury,
right?
I believe, right?
And
Help.
Woody Mercury, maybe. Woody HG from, well, we're not going to say where he's from.
Well, I would say this. This is good. This is a really great question because with every project, I'm always looking for an excuse to buy a new tool. So the tool you need to buy, and this is a fantastic tool. If you don't have one, you need to have it. It's fairly inexpensive for a stationary power tool. Go to Home Depot and get their combination random orbit sander with the belt attachment. And just sand all those things with a belt sander.
It's a belt sander.
No, the
and
oscillating spindle sander.
Yeah.
Oh,
with the belt.
the rigid?
Yeah, and just sand those things, all 4 faces, and just knock the corners and the edges off too. Boom, 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 everything done. And then either finish them or don't finish them. Shellac's fine because it's non-toxic and all that good kind of stuff. They're just going to get chewed on and thrown around
And licked.
Yeah.
And then the cat's going to find one. Then the dog's going to find the other one, and they all get put in a pile. So I wouldn't worry about hand planing and scraper surfaces. And the reason why you are getting tear out on that glued up surface, you sort of hit half of it, which is you have a glue joint, which means the grain could be going different directions on either side of that joint. The second thing, you're buying red oak from a box store, you're buying plain sawn oak, which means those edges are quarter sawn. Yeah. And quarter sawn is notorious for wanting to tear out.
Quarter sawn oak.
Quarter sawn oak. Quarter sawn anything. Try quarter sawn cherry.
Yeah, that's true.
That's horrible. So
I just finished saying that.
Indirectly.
we didn't say anything about tear out. You said you didn't like quarter sawn cherry. But anyway, so yeah, I would just sand them all. It's a utilitarian thing. It's an excuse to buy a really, really cool oscillating spindle sander that you should have anyway.
But
and if you already have it,
do
use
not
that.
use the oscillating spindle sander. Use
put
the
the
belt
belt
sander
portion,
attachment.
right.
Yeah.
Attachment.
But that tool
Yes.
is like cheaper than the number 5 probably was.
Yeah, it's
If it's a high end
200.
number 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was under
It's
like
$200.
$200
but
Yeah.
That's like an awesome, it always wins best value and best overall.
Ben
in
would
our
only
tool
get it
tests.
if it were cordless and ran off batteries.
Is that true, Ben?
Ben likes all his stationary machinery. He's not going to get a 3 horsepower table saw till they're battery operated.
Should we do another question?
Yeah. Mike, you want to pick one?
Yeah. This better not be a long one, Ben. I'm just going to make up a question.
Summarize. Ooh, it's not too bad.
Okay. Oh, it's for me.
It's from you? Perfect.
It's for me, from me.
It's like Christmas.
It is like Christmas.
This is from Avi. Avi says, I have a question about leaving dovetails proud on the joining surface. I've noticed in Mike Pekovich's work, for example, that dovetails often protrude and have a really elegant soft round over. I'm wondering how that look is achieved. Is it sanded only after the joint is together? That hurts just a little bit, Avi, because I try to use a block plane and keep really crisp chamfers on my through dovetails. However, if I were going to round them, I would still chamfer primarily with a block plane and then just sort of round that over, maybe probably 320 grit is enough to sort of get a round over there. The cool thing about that is that because the surfaces are already done, you can pre-finish all those surfaces and do away with the headache of through joinery, which is if you get squeeze out on the end grain or between the joints, it's horrible. But just do a little pre-finish with shellac and try not to get glue on the end grain. But if you do, it should pop off and it won't discolor anything.
Here's how I would do it.
Ben, you redeemed yourself with this question. Good job.
Go to Home Depot.
Yes.
Get yourself that
belt sander.
And then sand those things down until they're flush.
Who needs a hand plane? Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking of this, but as Mike was reading the question, I thought he had covered this in an article, and I was remembering years ago we had a contributing editor who these guys are supposed to answer reader questions as they come in, and this guy's constant reply to folks was "Take my class."
But we did cover that technique. Tim Rousseau wrote an article about it a few years ago.
Our work is done here.
Sorry, Mike.
Yeah.
I'm busting your chops.
All right.
Another question, or do we? No, we're segment time.
Let's do a segment.
All
Let's
right.
get out of these boxes for a second. It's time to confess our smooth moves.
What would you do with a brain if you had
All
one?
right.
I have a Whopper.
All right, then you go first.
I've got a Whopper.
Start with the Whopper.
This one is legendary.
Yeah, let's have him go last, and then we'll, people forget about what we did.
That's true. You always go first with the smooth move because no one remembers. Yeah.
Well, I glue ups stress me out, and I have this rule, about woodworking in general that I tend not to try to do things when I'm tired, and with my limited time in the shop, sometimes that rule is really hard to adhere to because if I have like 15 minutes left of time to be in the shop, I'll try to get something done in that time. So I had some wonderful shop time yesterday and actually got like 3 hours in where I'm building this cabinet on stand, and I had all the case pieces planed and sanded and edged, and everything was working fine. I did a dry run, and I thought, well, I'll just wait till tomorrow. I'll come back and do it tomorrow night. And I thought, oh man, I'm so close. I've been sitting on these parts for weeks and trying to get them together. And so I went for it. Now, like I said, I'm using biscuit joinery to attach the top and the bottom to the sides and the partition.
Yeah.
And on the inside, I've got grooves routed for a shelf that would go above a drawer, and then on the inside, on the other side, there's going to be a door with a shelf in that compartment. So I've got those grooves routed. I've got everything lined up. I do the dry run, and the clamps work. Everything is going really nicely. So I take it apart, and as soon as I put glue in, I'm getting stressed because
Sure.
I've got biscuits and they swell pretty quickly, and I'm getting it all together, and I'm going boom, 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 and I get the whole thing together, and I had some persuasion problems, and I'm checking the case for square after I get all these clamps on, and it suddenly occurs to me that, oh my gosh, I put the partition in the wrong direction. I put it in upside down.
Ooh, so your shelf notches weren't quite where they wanted to be.
We're not the same length, nor within in the same location, and I was like, and I'm probably not supposed to use the language that I created, but ripped off all the clamps. I think my kids were running away from me at that time, and I'm trying to get that thing apart, and I can't get it apart. And then it occurred to me, and this is could be a technique of all time. And I remembered, my parallel jaw clamps, I can take the head off and make a reverse. And so that's what I did. I made it into a spreader. And that allowed me to pry the top and the bottom apart off the sides. And then I had to get the biscuits out, and it was just a big mess.
Wow.
It
I
was
think
awful.
that takes the MacGyver award.
Oh my God. It was just, and then the other thing is.
Did it break the biscuits?
No, the biscuits, I was surprised that nothing broke really. And I was surprised that I was able to get the biscuits out. But I had like 7 or 8 that I couldn't get out with my hand or with pliers. And so I remembered my 1/8" chisel, and an 1/8 is perfect to get into that slot. So I put it in, bevel down, and wedged up the biscuits, and they popped out.
Wow.
But now I'm basically starting from scratch though, because I've got to resurface and get all the, any glue that was left over. And it was quite embarrassing. I just was like, I broke my rule and look what happened.
Yeah. That's a bummer.
I predict that we will get at least 3,472 emails extolling the virtues of hide glue, and its reversibility.
With hide glue, you could reverse that, and it sticks to itself, so it's no problem gluing it back up.
Yeah.
Which is true. I don't know why I'm using a bad voice, because it's really smart. It's good advice.
And you can rest the bottle in the curve of your tricorn hat.
Yeah, the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, how, like this bonehead thing. I went from having a great day and, everything was working out smooth, and I just whatever, just craziness where you just kind of lose your mind. And fortunately, I saw it and I saved
you
it.
Saw
so
it could have been worse.
It could have been worse. Yeah. I'd have firewood, because I was thinking there's no way I would have been able to, first of all, fit my router inside the case to reroute the grooves, and patching them. I would have burned it. It would have been awful. So I was fortunate that I got it, and I used just yellow glue, Type-On yellow glue, and I was surprised that the case actually came apart, because, like I said, I was muscling that thing, trying to get it apart with my arms, and I realized, oh, wait a minute, I've got these parallel jaw clamps sitting right here. So ripped the head off one, turn it around, and it came apart like that. Cool. It was pretty amazing.
But in the future, if you were stuck with that and you couldn't fit a router in there and you didn't want to beat it apart and break it, one option is to install like a mitered lining to the whole case, and then you could route, stop. In fact, Matt, I think you've done that, haven't you? I know Tim Russo has done that.
Yeah, I've done that. You've done that. Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Tim Russo
That's
wrote an article about it.
So.
That's a good idea. Or I could have made it a tool cabinet or garbage can.
No, that's good. Well, it sounds like
I recovered, and now I'm going back to it.
Awesome.
It's just
first of all, let's just clarify something that was just said. Now, you said, Matt, you've done that before. I have used that technique before, but not because...
No. I did not imply that. No. In fact, you posted a really nice, beautiful wall cabinet that was oak on the outside, and it was basswood
basswood liner
for nice effect. And I've done the same thing when I do boxes with lots of drawers. Sometimes the whole thing is a mitered liner. It's sort of like on a what do you call those big spice boxes?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
Where they often have mitered liners for all the drawers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It means you do all that after the whole thing is glued up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Spice boxes.
All right. Well,
Mike better go next.
All right. Remember that awesome technique I was talking about earlier with the spacers and the double spacers for my double tenons? And those were, in fact, for a project I'm working on that I'm writing an article on. It is a Krenov-style case-on stand. So, I want things to be as perfect as possible. And this technique got me tenons that were as perfect as I could get them with a really smart technique that I'm happy to share. So I do all this, and so you're left with all the cheat cuts, but you have to remove the waste between the tenons. Well, these tenons were offset to one edge of the board. So on one edge, there was just like a 16th inch wide shoulder. So the tenon was exposed. On the opposite end, there was a big 3/4 inch piece of waste I had to cut off. So I'm going to the bandsaw, cutting off the pieces of waste, and then I cut off a piece of waste, and I said, that did not look 3/4 of an inch wide. It looks like 5/16 wide. So I had just like knocked off one of my pristine double tenons at the bandsaw. Mm-hmm. So I saved it, and I'm going to chamfer it when I chamfer my other ones. I'm going to glue it up. I'm going to pound that sucker home from the outside, and no one's going to know.
Well, won't there be a gap? I mean, it won't take up the full mortise, right? Because you have a kerf in there because you cut it off. So
No, I cut it off at the
The
baseline.
base.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh,
no,
okay.
it's perfect.
Okay.
It's going to look like a tenon from the outside. It's just not connected to anything from the inside. But it's a double tenon, so they got one tenon in
Yeah.
the front, two in the back.
It's funny.
Is
how
that going to be in the illustration in the article?
I think Tim
It's gonna
Russo
be
wrote an
whoops.
article on that. So.
It's going to be a big whoops.
No,
panel.
no, that will not appear in the article.
No.
I'm
You know-
pretty sure as I'm laying that out, I won't have room for
Yeah,
that.
that photo is just not going to make it
Yeah.
in.
It's really funny, though. I mean, not funny, but how quickly things go awry.
Yeah, it's like pop.
Because I know there have been times where I've been making a cut, and I'm thinking, oh wait, this isn't right, and I get my body still moving forward through the cut. And it's like, oh no, that wasn't right. That was really stupid. I had time to break and I didn't.
Yeah, I will go with a similar smooth move. I actually could not remember. I couldn't think of anything that I've messed up recently.
So he's got one from Tim Rousseau.
Oh yeah, this is one that I saw Tim Rousseau do. No, this is a similar thing, and I've done this many times, which is why I'll use it. So when I do drawers at the back, I do at the top of the side is a half pin.
Yes.
But at the bottom, there's no pin until you get above the groove for the bottom. And then I cut my bottom, the back, in line with that so you can slide the back in, right?
Yes.
This is one of the traditional ways of making a drawer.
Yes.
So in other words, right above the groove for the bottom is a pin,
Yes.
a pin socket on the side, on the tailboard. Well, so that means you have to like cut out that half socket for the pin at the top,
Yes.
but you don't do it at the bottom.
This is correct.
I cannot tell you how many times I have gone ahead and cut it out at the bottom, made that cut at the bottom, and then realized, oh, crap, I shouldn't be doing this. And there's a little kerf cut into the side, and then it just gets, so I just, jam a piece of wood down in there and glue it up and plane it flash and everything.
No, I'm guilty of cutting that whole thing off, and you end up with little notches on the bottom back corner of your drawers. So now whenever I see that and looking at Ben, I say, ooh, I know what happened there.
Did you do that recently, Ben?
Yeah.
Oh,
What happened, Ben?
poor Ben. I had no idea. Everyone does
It's
that.
okay. You'll never do it again.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, you will.
Over and over again.
I got 2 drawers that way.
Yeah.
You did. Yeah, that's embarrassing.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question, if we dare
no.
to go back to this well.
Oh, well, I'm gonna open this box. This is one of my favorite ones right here. It has little angled sides on it, and
Didn't you just open that one?
Just as an explainer for quartersawn or riffs on cherry.
yeah, I just picked it up as a, and it's got a really
Fabric inside.
nice fabric on the inside.
Oh, and
Are those
poles.
golf,
Nice
golf
draw
tees?
poles,
Oh,
too.
I thought they were golf
Yeah,
tees.
I don't know what those are doing in there. And some pulls that I turned. All right, here we go. Question. Oh, man. That's a bum. All right. This is from the same guy, and it's long again.
It's like Stairway to Heaven.
No, this is from Woody, though. So this is another. Yeah, he pronounces it Woody Mercury.
Oh.
Yeah. I wonder if you're related to Freddie. He says, "Hi, guys. I have a couple of projects under my belt and built these with an understanding of movement and some techniques to accommodate wood movement. But I seem to have underestimated the humidity swings throughout the year, resulting in unsightly gaps or parts that have taken up the room I've allowed and left me wondering if they'll fail. In other words, they expanded too much. I've started to monitor the relative humidity in my basement shop, but have no sense for what humidity changes to expect in the rest of my house throughout the year. So my questions are as follows." He likes to ask 2 questions. I think he's a scientist because this is all very orderly and it's numbered and everything. Do you guys use any wood movement calculators or just rules of thumb when anticipating amount of movement? Do you guys, question the second, do you guys monitor or even control your shop humidity, either at Fine Woodworking or in your own shops? So 2 questions there. How do we account for wood movement? And do we monitor the relative humidity?
Well, I can answer the Fine Woodworking shop question.
No, we don't.
But we keep it at like 90 degrees and pretty dry.
Well,
sometimes.
actually, the shop down there has pretty big swings. In the winter,
that's
it's
true.
really dry.
It's uninsulated. The
crazy
heater's
dry.
blasting.
Yeah.
It will literally suck the moisture out of your skin.
Yeah, I
Yes.
remember
You spend too much time in there.
I made a little table, like a dining, not a dining table, but like a breakfast table, and I glued it up. Went home, I glued it up plain. Went home one night before attaching it to the base. Came back the next day and it had cupped on me just overnight.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So anyway,
I do not keep. I cannot control humidity in my shop. It swings from super dry in the winter to jungle swamp in the summer.
yeah, mine's pretty temperate. I think in that realm. I have a dehumidifier which works sometimes, but I don't know. It seems pretty. It does feel more humid certainly in the summer, but I don't know. I just factor that in. If I build something in the summer, I tend to leave a smaller gap, and if I build it in the winter, I tend to leave a bigger gap.
Yeah, I think Woody's definitely onto something. It is a two-part question. One is you got to kind of know your shop, where you're at in relation to other places your furniture is going to live. And number two, seasonally, where you're at. You're building in February where with the heat on, or in August where things are about as humid as they're going to get. If you're building in a humid shop, basement shop, in a way, that's kind of like building in August all the time. And that if you're building in an environment which is more humid than where the piece of furniture is going to live, then just build everything really tight, because it's all going to shrink once you get out of that basement. And also, get yourself a little, hygrometer for your house, and just kind of see what the difference is. I sort of control my climate just sort of as a matter of course, because in the summertime I run an air conditioner, which is pulling moisture out of the air. And in the wintertime, when I am heating, I usually keep, an old metal, teapot on top of my heater just to put some moisture back into the air. But always with the understanding that I'm going to build really loose in the wintertime when it's dry. Yes, and really tight when it's really humid. I don't have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, it's a good rule of thumb. That's kind of what I follow.
It's harder in the wintertime to build loose because the gaps are bigger than I want them to be. It's not unreasonable if I'm doing, say, a 7-drawer dresser in February, and then in August, you got to touch up a couple drawers.
Yeah.
But chances are once you hit it once in August, they're good. So when I make furniture for people, number one, I try to build in large enough gaps where it's not going to stick, but I really tell them, look, if it sticks, call me because we can fix it. And I will even call them in the summertime and say, is everything works? Everything? And first they say, oh, everything's great. It's really beautiful. Do all the drawers open really easily? Well, one of them's fine. I'll be right over with my little block plane and take care of everything. So
yeah,
you do what you can, and then, kind of fix things as needed when things get humid, and that should be the last time you have to touch it.
I think it was Garrett who used to keep a couple of boards on his wall, and he kind of monitored.
I was just about to say this.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to continue?
Well, I was going to say, instead of
it's a low-tech way.
Yeah, hygrometer or whatever it's called. So I use riffs on cherry. So I keep a piece of riffs on cherry in the house and measure it at different times, the width of it at different times of the year and the thickness at different, and that gives me an indication of how much things could change between my house and my shop.
You don't do that.
I know I said I could. Oh. I don't do that. I don't really care. I just build stuff,
So what Garrett has is long offcuts like from the end of a table. So it's all end grain.
Yeah.
Because if you have like a long strip of wood that's long grain and measure it length to length, it isn't going to move very much. So he's basically multiplying the effective wood movement because he has a big 30-inch or 20-inch long piece of end grain cutoff, which is going to move. And he actually measures that and writes down the date. And
it's a lot more work than.
I wonder how often Garrett actually measures that.
Every morning. He's got his routines.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, I just kind of, you build a little gappy in the winter and then a little snug in the summer.
Yep.
And if you're building it for yourself, if it gets a little snug in the summer, you just check it. And when it starts to get too tight to pull out the drawer, you go back and you hit it. I mean, if it's a panel, you can accommodate for expansion fairly easily when you make the frame and panel.
Yeah.
You don't have to. It's really drawers that we're talking about. Maybe
The
doors.
visible gaps.
And doors.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did do a little arts and crafts sort of small cabinet with a single drawer and built it in the wintertime. And I don't know, July or August, it just locked up tight. It was not moving. So it was just like, don't worry about it. Had to wait till the wintertime. Got it back open and planed it then.
Yeah.
Hard to tell a client that. Yeah, just don't open that for 6 months and
Right.
we'll deal with that.
It's
Yeah.
like a hidden compartment.
I have a box right now that someone has bought, and I need to send it to them, but I kind of had to wait because I made it in the late winter, early spring, and summer rolled around, and the drawers would not open. And I was just like, well, unfortunately they didn't need it right away. And I was like, well, I was going to wait. And then I just got them out this weekend. So one of these nights this week, I'm going to be in there touching them up and, getting them ready to go.
Don't worry, Ben's going to edit that section out.
I'm not worried.
All right.
I just raised the price, more work.
Now it's time to get an earful from our listeners and viewers. Tony writes, thank you so much for all your great podcasts. I have a question from Matt. Oh, Matt's going to love this one. You recently spoke of your new lovely Japanese hammer you bought with a sharpening stone. Being a Japanese tool, does it hit on the pull stroke? And does that hurt when it does?
I don't know. That makes me groan.
Yeah.
This one is, well, I'm sorry, what, Mike?
Oh, I was just going to say, whenever anyone complains about the humor on the show, it's like, this is actually pretty funny. And if you don't think so, then find something else. But then when you actually hear someone else like throw a woodworking joke in there and you realize how bad and unfunny it is, you realize,
We're
oh my
not
God,
funny.
we're not.
Yeah, we're not
at all.
Carolines
So,
yet.
Yeah.
No, that's
So-
all right.
There
We're
you go.
on thing. Text Pilot writes, great stuff, but needs audio work. I think that's for you, Ben. Gotta get on that audio work.
All your boys back in Nashville be very disappointed.
They're going to come back and take your Grammy away. Derby Shaw chimes in. Sorry, but you're not as funny as you think you are.
Touche.
While informative, the constant laughing at their own lame jokes is incredibly tiresome. It is truly sophomoric and is reminiscent of teenage boys with their first experience on a tape recorder. Dial it back a few notches, okay?
I've got bad news for you. This dial goes to 11, and we've only gotten to 5.
Finally, Matt Dub 1 writes, first off, Mike Pekovich is the Gandalf of woodworking.
Nice. Just stop right there.
All right. He reminds me of my dad, and that's a good thing. Matt Kenny is a true snarky and hilarious woodworking inspiration. Reminds me of most of my friends. Tom reminds me of a Marine sniper turned woodworker for some reason.
He reminds us of that, too.
Well done, gentlemen. So, well, that, I don't know. I got to figure that one out. Anyway, that's all for this episode of Shop Talk Live. Tune in again in 2 weeks on September 30th for our next episode. Remember to send your questions and comments to shoptalk@taunton.com. And please spread the word about Shop Talk Live to your woodworking friends and neighbors. You can catch the podcast via iTunes, stream it on the web at shoptalklive.com, or catch us on iHeartRadio. Also, don't forget to visit finewoodworking.com to keep up with the tool giveaway for our 40th anniversary. The current prize is a Whiteside 7-piece router bit set. To win, you must enter by September 19th. To enter, go to finewoodworking.com/40sweeps. That's the number 40 again. It's finewoodworking.com/40sweeps. Finally, you can keep up with Fine Woodworking on Instagram and on Facebook, and look for all of us on Instagram as well. Thanks for listening, and have fun in the shop.
And by the way, those Whiteside bits are probably going to be slightly used before you get them if you win them.
Yeah. Tim Rousseau used them in an article.
Poor Tim. We better call Tim. Heads up, dude.